Hi, in this video I'm gonna explain a Python example of how to perform the pre-processing of an event log before going for the process analysis. In this project I'm gonna depend on pandas and numpy in Python. I'm gonna provide you with how to filter out the unrelevant activities, how to filter out the unrelevant attributes, how to provide calculation for the activity cost. Let's start. In this practice, we have the given event log here. We have a case identifier. We have an activity. We have a log type attribute. We have element ID, process ID, and other attributes like lifecycle transition, timestamp, the resource, and the resource ID. There are some unrelevant attributes such as log type, element ID, process ID, and resource ID. These are not relevant to the analysis. Also, we have non-relevant events such as event 1 start, event 1 to end, and so on. So we need to filter out these events that are not relevant. Also, in our analysis, we need to have a start timestamp and end timestamp. In this type of event logs, we have, for example, for an activity A, we have 3 life cycle transition. We have assign, we have start, we have complete. Assign is at the moment that the activity is assigned to a specific resource. The start is the time at which an activity has been started. The complete is the timestamp at which the activity has been ended or completed. So we don't need the assign. We need just the start timestamp and the end timestamp or the complete timestamp. So we need to take that and transform them into 2 separate columns, one for the start timestamp and one for end timestamp. For the resource, we don't need this attribute, it's not relevant, but for the resource, this attribute is the resource name. If you can notice that there is the resource pool 1, resource pool 2, resource pool 3, which is a role inside the organization or a group of people who are performing some certain tasks. We need to generate a new attribute in the event log that will hold the role of the resource which is executing the activity. In other words, we need the output of this pre-processing to be like that. A case identifier, an activity, and the resource, the role, which is the role of the resource, the start timestamp of the activity, the end timestamp of the activity, and the cost per activity. In order to do that, I have made this Python notebook here. I'm gonna explain every step in details. So first, I'm gonna import the required libraries. In this project, we have the operating system in order to handle the directories, the NumPy and pandas for statistics and for data frame handling, because we will deal with the event log as a data frame. Seaborn and the matplotlib for plotting figures to visualize the statistics that you estimate for the event log. First, let's load the file. The file is there. We need to read it as a CSV. As you can see, we have the problems here. We need to make sure that we don't have unrelevant events and unrelevant attributes. To filter out unrelevant attributes, I'm gonna subset the event log to include only the relevant attributes. And to filter, and after that, I'm gonna perform some renaming for the attributes. So the renaming can be done by rename function for the data frame. It takes as an input a dictionary of the old values to be the new values. So this is the dictionary. I'm gonna pass it, and now I have the data frame that contains only the relevant attributes, and I have renamed the attribute to be easier to deal with during the analysis. And after that, I need to make sure that the data type of the timestamp is timestamp or date time within the pandas. So before it was if I run that code, I have the timestamp to be as an object, and I have the case identifier as an integer. So I need to transform the case identifier to become a string, and I need to parse the timestamp to become datetime, so I can handle the datetime operation within the Python itself. So I'm gonna make a parsing function for the datetime. It will parse the timestamp attribute, and it takes the format of the datetime within the CSV file. And after that, I'm gonna replace it for the old timestamp. Also, the case identifier, I'm gonna convert the data type to become a string. So after that, I have already transformed the timestamp to become a datetime. And then we need to filter out the unrelevant activities on unrelevant rows. We need to filter out the cases, the rows with activity name that contain a start or end, as we have seen in the Excel sheet. And also we need to delete the rows that has a transition that equals to assign. For the assign, I'm gonna make a subsetting of the data frame, and I'm gonna make the condition bring me the rows that do not contain assign in the transition attribute. And for the start and end activity labels, I'm gonna make use of the string substring function, which is contains. So if the row contains a start, negate it and filter it out. So the start, I will do both the start and the end. And after that, let's look for the resources. The resources here are resource pool 1 with ID 3, the resource pool 3 with ID 2, the resource pool 1 with ID 2, and so on. We need to split this resource name to become, this is a role, and this is the ID of the resource. In order to do that, we can split this string by the dash and take the string before the dash to be the role value. I can do that using an apply function, and I'm gonna use a lambda function with a split function within every value or every value within the attribute. So for the resource, I split the value with the dash, and I take the first one, and I apply that for all the rows. So I give the access to be 1. And after that, I'm gonna replace the resource pool 1 to become role 1, and the resource pool 2 to become role 2, and so on. I need to make that replacement in order to make it easier to read. So I'm gonna make the replacement using replace function. And now let's make sure that everything is okay. We still have the data types as we had before performing the filtration. Now we need to calculate the cost per activity. In order to calculate the cost per activity, we have this file here that represents a lookup for the cost for activity per second. In order to calculate the cost for activity inside the event log, we need to calculate the duration of every activity in seconds, and then we multiply the duration by the cost per second. In order to do that, we need to iterate over every case, and then for every activity, we take the transition that is a start to be a start timestamp, and the transition that is complete to be a complete timestamp. So this is a start and complete timestamp. We can put them into a list, and after that, after looping over all the traces in the event log, we can transform that into a data frame back again. Or you can perform a join, but make sure that you will have, as a joining table, you will have the sequence for the activity inside the event log. So because some activities are being repeated inside the same case, so you need to keep the sequence of these activities. So you can make like a sequence attribute for every activity, so you just, when you do the join, it's gonna be easier for you. It's gonna be correct for you. Otherwise, you will need to do some complex filtration in order to filter out the the replicated rows due to the replication of the activities inside the same case. So I'm gonna run the function. I'm gonna pass the data frame to it. And now I have the start timestamp and the end timestamp for every activity. So now we can calculate the duration. So I can make a new attribute here that is called duration. The duration is the difference between the end timestamp and the start timestamp. And after that, I can multiply the duration for the cost per duration. So here I calculate the duration. You can use total seconds difference. And then you perform the join in order to combine the two tables together, and then you multiply the duration by the cost per second. Now we have the cost for the activity. We don't need these two columns, so I'm gonna filter them out. So the rest of the event log will be like that. So I have the case identifier, the activity, the resource, the start timestamp, and the end timestamp, and the cost. You can also perform different statistics as mentioned here. So you can perform the statistics here, or the maximum trace length, the minimum trace length, the same statistics that you can perform inside a Promore or other process mining tools. And also the strength of using Python is you can have your own visualization, or you can dig deeper into the processing of the value distribution for every case, for example, or for every activity, like what we needed for the simulation, if you remember. Sometimes we need to perform the analysis by our own script in Python. And also you can have more statistics for your file, and after that you can just export the data frame to a CSV file, and after that you can load it to a Promore like this. So this is the output from the pre-processing, and now I imported it. I need to make sure that the start timestamp is a start timestamp, the end timestamp is an end timestamp, and this is an event attribute because the cost changes with every activity, and the activity is the activity, the case ID is the case identifier, and this is a role, and this is the resource. So now it's mapped correctly. It's uploaded successfully to a Promore, and now I have the pre-processed event log here. You can make filters, for example, using the cost that you have already calculated. So you can bring an attribute filter and per cost, and then you can select the costs that you would like to filter. So the derived attributes can be beneficial for your analysis. So before performing the analysis, you need to perform the pre-processing. Sometimes you need to bring derived attributes in order to help you with your analysis. And that's it. In the next video, I'm gonna explain another way of processing the event logs using Python. See you in the next video.